Well, we're a man down this week. We're playing shorthanded if we're playing hockey. I think Mammoth fans would probably understand that more than Cougars fans. But welcome in to the Daytona Beach News-Journal's UCF preview for the final game of the regular season. The Knights are traveling way out west to Provo, Utah to face the 11th ranked going into this week's update for the college football playoff rankings, BYU Cougars, just one loss on the season. And to talk about all things BYU, we have found Mitch Harper, who is the BYU insider for KSL Sports in Salt Lake City. Mitch, how you doing? You're on my end of the world today, aren't you?
I am, yes. I'm here in Florida for BYU basketball. They'll be playing in the MTE, the ESPN events at the Walt Disney World, so ESPN event. So I'm out here in Florida all week, and then I'll be flying out to the game too. So it'll be weird for me to fly to a BYU home game, but it's going to be, it's a big opportunity for BYU. Happy to be here to talk about this one because this is the type of setup that BYU's been dreaming of for years, to have this opportunity to be on the doorstep of something big. So this is a big game this weekend for BYU.
Yeah, that leads us into our first point. I mean, obviously, let's talk about the big storylines for each team. We'll lead off with BYU, and they've got everything to play for, it sounds like.
They do, and they're 10-1 overall this season. And, I think a lot of people look at BYU and say they're lucky. They find ways to escape games. But in a league like the Big 12 that everyone that doesn't follow the conference just says, oh, it's wide open, BYU is actually consistent. They're the winningest team in this conference since last year. They've won 21 games since the start of last season. So, yes, in a wild, crazy Big 12 where the impossible seems to happen, BYU is actually steady, and you can count on them almost every single week to defy expectations. And this is a team that's riding high. They had a huge win over the weekend at Cincinnati and a night game at Nippert. And I'm sure UCF fans know about how energized that crowd can be at night at Nippert. So it was a good win for BYU, and they feel really good about where they're at heading into this final week of the regular season, and with an opportunity to get into the college football playoff and to get in that Big 12 championship game. Last year they were so close to making it to Arlington, but tiebreakers kept them out. And when they played in the Alamo Bowl against Colorado, then quarterback Jake Retzloff, he said that was the Big 12's people's champion in San Antonio. This year they actually have a chance to play in that championship game and not let it be a people's champ. So it's a huge opportunity for BYU this weekend.
Yeah, I'm not sure luck follows you around for 2 consecutive years. I think I would bet more on BYU being really good as opposed to just being really lucky for that kind of sample size. But looking at, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say too, Chris, I think UCF fans can appreciate that. I mean, you get back when, those back-to-back years of going undefeated with Scott Frost, then Heupel, everyone in the nation just saying, oh, it's a fluke, it's a joke. Yet I think there's some similarities between BYU and UCF where no matter what the circumstances, you can be in any league, any setup, they always just get discredited. And, BYU's had, a little bit longer history than UCF, but these are similar programs in the standpoint that they just seem to never get respected. When they're knocking on the doorstep of something big, they always get knocked. So BYU's facing that once again. I thought when BYU joined this league 2 years ago, I think the thought was you join a conference like this, those, fraud or not good enough to match up with the big boys, that goes out the door. But it seems to still carry even to this day.
I remember certain pundits that will not be named in this particular video saying that if UCF ran it back a second time, they'd have to be invited to the college football playoff when it was just 4 teams back in 2018. Then they did that, and quickly that got walked back and forgotten, swept under the rug. UCF ran so Cincinnati can walk. Or I think I have that backwards. UCF walks so Cincinnati can run. Real quick for the Knights, let's talk about their storylines going into the week. Bowl eligibility, that's on the line. It's a huge mountain to climb at 4,500 feet of altitude and potentially a snowstorm on Saturday morning. But they do have the opportunity to play for extending their season. They beat Oklahoma State 17-14, an ugly game in the first half. They turned it over twice. They were able to shut out Oklahoma State in the second half, held them to 27 yards of offense, forced a game-ending interception in the final minute. So they were able to survive a game that they were double-digit favorites to win. But the same issues they've had really all year long. Pre-snap penalties have been a killer. Offensive inconsistency, especially running the football, has been a killer. Turnovers of late have been a killer. Taven Jackson has thrown an interception or turned the ball over. He's thrown an interception, I believe, in 5 straight starts, turned it over in 7. So that's been a problem. And for the team like UCF, where the margins are already slim, any sort of negative play like that really does throw a wrench into the overall plans. And UCF's road record is downright ugly. They've gone 0-4 this year. They've lost 8 consecutive games away from home dating back to last year. They're averaging 10.8 points per game on the road this season. And now you're facing one of the best defensive teams in the conference, and certainly one of the teams that man for man stacks up as a tough matchup across the board at every position. So it is a very tall task facing UCF. So let's learn some about these BYU players. Mitch, give me a couple guys offensively and defensively that UCF fans should get to know a little bit.
Offensively for BYU, you might think I'd start with the quarterback, but to me, and I've said this all season long, BYU goes as far as running back LJ Martin will take them. Last year, he was wearing number 27. This year, he changed his number to number 4 and wanted to go back to an old high school number for LJ. But he's been playing excellent this year. I think he's the best running back in the Big 12. And last week against Cincinnati, he had a career high 222 rushing yards on 32 carries, about 6 yards per pop. I mean, he was excellent to the point where now the junior running back, this could be maybe his last home game, because he could be, I think, potentially an NFL running back next season for coming out of BYU. So I think, and he dealt with a shoulder injury that he suffered back on October 25th against Iowa State. It was at the end of that first quarter, and he wasn't fully healthy in that Texas Tech game. He was pretty candid with reporters a couple weeks ago that he didn't have the confidence in his shoulder, and going up against the Texas Tech defense as good as the Red Raiders had, I think he didn't have that confidence going into that game. And since that Texas Tech loss, he's looked really good, the TCU game, and then, of course, Cincinnati. So LJ Martin, he's the key, and BYU has no problem, especially in a game where weather could play a role. They'll lean on him and run the football a lot. They don't have much depth after him, though. If he's banged up, there is no other running back that's really a threat in that running back unit. But LJ, when he's going, he is a special talent. And then, of course, at quarterback, Bear Bachmeier, number 47, true freshman signal caller. He arrived in early June at BYU and replaced Jake Retzloff. And when he arrived on campus, the expectation was he's going to compete to be the number 2 quarterback behind Retzloff, who started in the game last year in the bounce house for BYU and had the Cougars flying high and undefeated. And even last year, he said some kind of tongue-in-cheek remark about UCF, saying they were the best 3-4 football team he's ever seen. Like, that was kind of Jake Retzloff's thing. He'd always give some kind of quote that was almost bulletin board material a little bit, but he was a gamer. But I think Bear Bachmeier's been even better. And, he's a freshman, and sometimes not the greatest. He'll make some mistakes passing the football. Like last week against Cincinnati, you saw some of his decision-making where he's just predetermining where he's going to throw the football. And that's still kind of the true freshman in him. But, man, as far as a runner goes, he will go up the middle, and he loves to invite contact. And there was a moment in the fourth quarter against Cincinnati where he was grimacing a little bit, but he still stayed in. He's a physical runner. Bear's pretty good, and he's one to watch. And he's got a lot of size too. So he's been an excellent player for BYU. He's a humble kid, very young, former Stanford signee, was there in spring practices. Then he transferred over to BYU. He's been everything BYU coaches wanted, and then some. I remember going back to fall camp when I was talking to head coach Kalani Sitake in a one-on-one after they picked Bear Bachmeier to be the starting quarterback. And, I kind of thought at that time, like, this is going to be a little bit of an up-and-down situation for BYU. But even Kalani Sitake's like, this is a guy that doesn't make mistakes. And they felt really confident even back in August that the season that they had a year ago could be replicated and then some with Bear. And sure enough, they're knocking on the doorstep of doing everything they did last year and more. So they had a lot of confidence in him early on when he arrived in campus, and he's lived up to that high expectations that this coaching staff had.
And then real quick defensively for BYU, the guy I've looked at and has really stood out to me when I've watched him is Jack Kelly, the linebacker. So is there another guy in addition to Kelly that really has kind of caught your eye throughout the course of the season?
Kelly's excellent, and that's a great pick because I think he could be an NFL linebacker. His closing speed really is what shines with him. Also, Isaiah Glasker, number 16, his linebacker running mate. He's really good, got good size, 6'5". Hasn't been as maybe impactful as last season. I mean, he's still really good, and he could be a guy that after this season has a decision to make in terms of the NFL, but I don't know if he's been to the level that he was last year. He's dealt with some injuries too. He's been pretty banged up and navigated those this season, but he's one to watch. And I would also add Falatau Satawala. Last year, he had his first career interception against the Knights. Yep. And this year,
a true freshman last year, I believe, right?
Correct. And this year as a sophomore, some injuries allowed for him to climb the depth chart and be a full-time starter, and he's taken that spot and ran with it. He's been excellent. He had a pick six against Iowa State that really closed the door and got BYU that victory in Ames. He's an excellent player. And then I'd also add in the interior, the defensive line, Keanu Tanavasa, number 57, a former transfer from Utah. His stats aren't glamorous, but his impact in the interior, when you watch him and how much attention he commands from opposing offensive lines, Keanu Tanavasa is one to watch as well.
I'll give a couple players for UCF that have my attention going into the game. Dylan Wade certainly has to be one of them. The tight end, an Orlando native, Maryland transfer, has really come into being, if not the number one option in this pass game, and certainly among them, right? I mean, he's coming off of a career high 145 yards against Oklahoma State, had 2 touchdowns, one of which was on a 4th down that really kept the game alive and eventually tied the score. He had the opening play of the second half, an 84-yard touchdown. It entirely changed the tempo and the tone of that game. He's become really an important guy for this team, and I think will be one player they absolutely try to retain. The offense maybe doesn't have as many must-keep pieces, or will probably go through more turnovers. They seek playmakers that maybe fit Scott Frost's mentality and his scheme a little better. But Dylan Wade has been a really, really good add out of the portal. And then looking on the defense, I think certainly Jaden Bellamy, who tipped the pass into Braden Marshall's hands for the interception. He's been one of the better corners in the Big 12 throughout the course of the season. So I think if they try to throw it his way, that could give UCF an opportunity to make a play. But I do think stopping the run is going to be the number one key, and I think that falls upon the linebackers. It certainly falls upon Cole Kozlowski, Lewis Carter, and the rest of that group, Kelly Lawson when he checks in, to find the football, to make sure who's got it between Bachmeier and Martin, who ran for over 100 yards and a touchdown in last year's matchup against UCF here in Orlando. Prediction time, which is always... I always feel like I let out a sigh because I don't know what this team's going to do most weeks. Sometimes it's a little easier than others. What's your expectation? And give the folks a little bit of a taste of what to expect at LaVell Edwards Stadium.
Well, LaVell Edwards Stadium is a great spot. I think anyone that's making the trip out west to this game, they're going to have a great time. Win or lose, I think they'll enjoy the experience at BYU. It's always talked about on social media, when visiting fans come, but when you're in the visitor section in the northwest corner, BYU will bring ice cream. I think maybe in this situation they'll bring hot chocolate to the visiting fans. A great hospitality at BYU.
They bring it to the press box.
Yeah, press box. They'll have the Cougar Tails, I'm sure, for the visiting media.
Okay.
It's a great experience. And in the pregame, they have a Cougar Canyon event where there's some food trucks, a concert. It's on the west side of the stadium. There's also some inflatables and bounce houses for kids, a lot of different things, weather permitting, I'm sure. But it's a fun environment. I mean, it's BYU, and what's interesting too is I think BYU really prides itself on bringing the hospitality, because they've gone to some of these road venues, even last week at Cincinnati, where they're on the receiving end of some derogatory chants, the team, where it leads to athletic departments having to issue apologies and things like that, or even the Big 12 stepping in and levying fines. BYU really wants to, kind of break down perceptions of what the school and the faith of BYU, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is about, and really give a positive experience. Not to say they just want to let people have fun. You'll hear, if the UCF band isn't traveling, BYU's band will play the fight song for UCF. They'll have a UCF flag waving in the end zone. That kind of started when BYU went independent in 2011, which UCF's last visit to Provo, BYU's first year as an independent. They really adopted some of the things that Notre Dame was doing as an independent to kind of make it a fun experience, but they've kind of carried that over into the Big 12, even for conference foes. So it's a fun game day atmosphere, and the views will be spectacular. I mean, it'll be excellent. So you'll see the mountains in the backdrop. It is quite the sight to see coming to LaVell Edwards Stadium. So I think fans that are making the trip should have a positive experience. But as far as on the field, I think BYU, the one thing about this team is that they don't make mistakes as far as turning the ball over. And I think that's been probably the most impressive thing to me about Bear Bachmeier as a freshman. Last year's BYU team with Jake Retzloff, they had games where they're making mistakes and they'll put you in games. And Retzloff at times was up and down. Bear, maybe not as times explosive passing the football, even though he's had some big games over 300 yards. He just takes care of the football. And I think that's what is so fascinating to me about this BYU team, is just they are steady. They're not glamorous. I don't look at them as being a team that can, put up 40 points or 50 points in a game and get these style points week after week. But they are just steady. They will not beat themselves. So UCF will have to create turnovers that, BYU just doesn't typically cough up in order to stay in this game. So I think BYU will win this game. I think the areas where BYU's had some struggles in recent weeks has been special teams. Cincinnati had a big punt return that got them into the game. It was a 57-yard return. BYU's also had some issues with some of the punts in recent weeks. So that could be an area that maybe opens the door for UCF to maybe get a momentum-changing play to get them in and get some early success in that one. But for the most part, though, BYU is pretty steady. And I thought they've been better stopping the run in recent weeks, too. Since that Texas Tech game, BYU has been stout on that front, where early on in Big 12 play, they were giving up a lot of yards on the ground to opposing rushing offenses. So I like BYU in this spot. I think they've been very consistent, and I think they've looked better coming out of that Texas Tech loss a few weeks back, where that could have easily been a spot where BYU questioned how good of a team they are. I think they've only gotten better from that position. So I like BYU to win this game. I don't think it's going to be like 50 points scored. I think somewhere around 27 to 30 points for BYU, maybe 13 for UCF, maybe 10. But I think BYU wins comfortably, gets the win here.
Yeah, I like that you spent as much time as you did telling how accommodating it's going to be as far as the atmosphere and the friendly nature of BYU fans. While for the most part their team kicks the other team's teeth in, their home record is really good. I think it's over 75% all time. I forget the exact number, but they are a dominant home team, and they have been for quite some time. UCF, as I mentioned, the road woes. Scott Frost really, for the first time all year after the Oklahoma State game, admitted, we kind of are what we are at this point. It's not like it's profound, but it's something we've noticed all year. The trends that they have not corrected themselves, and I don't think they will all of a sudden overnight in Provo, or in the morning in Provo in this particular instance. But I just think that even though UCF does have something to play for, and I think that will give them incentive to go out there and win there. Scott Frost in particular has something to play for. His contract, it's a 6th year if they win the game, guaranteed to go to a bowl game, which is a bit of a surprising tidbit that we found out in the terms of the contract. BYU is just a cut above. I mean, this is a big physical veteran experienced team that is in a position right now that they've dreamed of for ages. And, there's nothing that I've seen across 11 games that would make me feel any different about UCF's chances to win this game than it did back in August, to be completely honest. I think BYU wins the game 37-10. And it wouldn't be surprising to me if BYU tries to go out there and like Texas Tech did 2 weeks ago and make it more of a statement as an at-large. I think that style points are going to matter, especially if they don't beat Texas Tech the week after that to win the Big 12 outright and secure the automatic berth. We're going to be splitting hairs here when it comes to the final team or two that gets into the field. And I think BYU, any opportunity that they have to to wow the committee or to change perceptions about their team, I think they need to take it. And I would say that this is one particular instance where they can.
I will say, though, Chris, that, Kalani Sitake historically, and Cougar fans sometimes get frustrated with this, that they don't tend to run it up. Kalani is a guy that, even that last second or late touchdown against Cincinnati kind of surprised people because typically BYU doesn't run it up. But I will say in this game, Kalani and Scott Frost have a really good relationship, and their friendship dates back when they were in the Pac-12. Both of them, Oregon OC for Frost, and Kalani was coaching at Utah. I think Kalani would call it off if they're.
I don't necessarily mean running it up in the sense of like trying to humiliate somebody. I just mean you want to win this game by multiple scores if you can. I like just to clarify that. I think it's more about just making sure that this game doesn't get uncomfortably close against a team that they're supposed to beat by potentially 3 scores according to the Vegas line. That's just all I mean.
Yeah, and I agree with that too. I think because I think. Cougar fans are going to want, if they got a chance to win by 40, they're going to want that. But to me, I just think that, Kalani, if they got a red zone late, they'll take the knee, because I think there is a lot of respect between Coach Frost and Coach Sitake. I mean, I even saw that at the Big 12 spring meetings here in Orlando where those two, they've got a great relationship, the two of them. Kalani, his wife is from Polk County. They love the air. I mean, Kalani's always visiting Florida, every year, at least every other year. So there's a good, healthy relationship between Sitake and Frost. It'll be fun to see those two, battling it out now as head coaches because it's the first time they're going up against each other as head coaches, whereas before it was as coordinators.
Mitch, where can the people find your work, and also where can they find you on social media?
KSLSports.com. I got a daily podcast, Cougar Tracks, that airs on KSL News Radio, the over-the-air flagship of BYU football. We host the radio broadcast for BYU side of things on KSL News Radio. So KSLSports.com, and then Instagram and X at Mitch_Harper and at KSL Sports. We'll have a bunch of coverage throughout the week. So even here in Orlando for BYU basketball, we'll have some coverage there, and then football on game day as well from LES. So it'll be busy times, and should be a fun holiday week with BYU and UCF this weekend. And then UCF fans, obviously, if you don't know by now, shame on you, first and foremost. But no, news-journalonline.com and at Chris Boyle, DB&J is where you can find me. And that's going to do it for us. Happy Thanksgiving early to everyone. We're shooting this on Monday, so everyone hopefully has a safe and happy holiday. Mitch, safe travel. See you going back home. We'll see you in Provo. Thanks, Chris. Likewise to you as well. And happy Thanksgiving, and looking forward to this weekend.